Yeah, I walk in the room, make the ceiling shake. Gold hoops, fresh fade, got that big boss cake. Never waited on a hand, I'm in my own lane. Told them put some respect when they say my name.
Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of They Tried It. I am your host, Lindiwe Davis, aka The Couch Coach, and I'm super excited for the guest that we have today. For those of you, if this is your first time tuning in, I want you to have a little bit of context. They Tried It as a podcast, a delicious podcast that's about featuring some of the most amazing women with a very strong focus of women of color who are professionals across various industries working and who have faced challenges and adversity and want to tell you the story of how they overcame that challenge, the story of how they overcame that adversity. Because a lot of times when we're in the middle of those types of things, we are on an island by ourselves, or at least it feels that way. The second part of and purpose of doing this podcast is to ensure that you know that you have a lot of courage within your heart, you have a lot of courage within your movement, and that there is a level of activation that you can tap into for yourself. Whether you decide to file a complaint, whether you decide to leave, whether you decide to pivot, whether you decide to go get that attorney. Either way, we want to showcase that there are so many amazing stories, and we hope that you find this information useful. And with that, a lovely, lovely guest today. We call her Jenny, aka Chen, aka, someone with a big, strong heart who's ready to help and assist you in any way that she can as well. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being here.
Lindiwe, thank you so much. I love that intro and the context you just gave, because I think that it is so aligned with everything that we're going to talk about. And as the first and only in a lot of the rooms that we're in, I feel like everything we're talking about is just making sure we're not the last. So happy to be here and having a very spicy conversation, I'm sure. I'll try to keep it hinged.
Yeah, I like a good hinged, unhinged. We'll jump back and forth. You never know.
There we go.
But I appreciate you so much for being here. I always like to start by asking guests a little bit about their origin story, and not necessarily all the things, right? Because we'd be here for hours and hours of deliciousness. But let's talk about what industries you were interested in and how you got into those industries.
Yeah, you're right. I could write a book with like 3 volumes with my story, but first generation Chinese Canadian immigrant. We came here in 1989 during the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square massacre as political refugees. And I feel like I grew up in so many environments where, you know, fitting in survival meant being quiet, being agreeable, not taking up space. I spent some formative years living in Plano, Texas also, which gives me my, I think, big personality here in Canada. And I feel like I've always been a people person. I have loved making relationships, making connections with people, building and nurturing those relationships. So sales always landed very naturally with me. And so I started my career as a young mom to a 1.5-year-old when I was 22 years old in a bank as a bank teller or customer service representative, I think they're called now. But I found myself a very creative, artsy, relationship type person in a world of numbers and realized so much of what we do from a technical side is really grounded in client management. So I went into investment sales and ultimately started speaking up about things, Lindiwe, which I'm sure a lot of people who do this work find themselves. And I ended up being tasked to be the leader for diversity, equity, and inclusion at a global wealth management firm of 6,000 professionals, and took the leap to start my own firm after about 5 years of that, because I realized this change that we're looking to drive can't be done one organization at a time. So here we are. That's hopefully the Coles Notes short firm version of this journey.
First of all, thank you so much for even giving that bit of insight. I think even starting off with this line about making sure, right, that we are not the last in the room, right? That we, after facing any kind of adversity, facing any kind of challenges, climbing our way into corporate spaces, trying to sit at the tables that were never really meant for us is super, super important. When you first got out of school, right? If you were going to school, getting certificates, etc., because a lot of us go different ways around education, formally and informally. Would you say that it was the best route to go from college into the financial space, for example? Or is it better for people to get some additional business training before they get to such a large space where people have a lot of different behaviors, they've been indoctrinated into company culture, et cetera, so that you're more prepared?
So that is a great question because, fun fact, I actually didn't pursue post-secondary education. And the reason being, I got pregnant with my daughter right before I turned 20 years old. And so I was a full-time mom managing retail clothing stores at the time. But I can say that everything that I had learned on the job made it not impossible, but very challenging to learn all of the technical side of finance, like economics, business, right? That you learn in your first year of taking a business course in university or college. I would say that I'm on the other side of the conversation right now, Lindiwe, with organizations to actually see potential and talent differently with some of these skills that we actually can't learn. So interpersonal communication, relationship management. I know you and I have been in rooms with like the smartest people, like book smart, high IQ, low EQ people that I would not put in front of my clients, right? And so I think that today there's a lot of opportunity to see strength, experience, potential, skills from all over, understanding that you don't have to be one thing and be on one specific trajectory to be very successful in a highly technical professional career.
Right. Right. And I'm so glad you called that out because a lot of times there is this thinking that you have to sit in this bubble. I got to go to school for engineering. I got to go to school for coding. I've got to go to school and get an MBA. When the truth of the matter is, there are various ways to build a path, but the concentration point here, and it seems to be missed because it's not taught in school, as you just pointed out, this bridging of theory and practice, understanding how do I use this skill set to get into the job? And then there's this other part around behavior, right? And because those things are not necessarily bridged together in an MBA program where, you and I are sitting there teaching a course about how to speak to people, communication equity, which is also a course that I have developed. But my point here is that there's not a lot of this bridging of theory and practice where people start to understand their own self-interrogation into how it is that they're going to be speaking to people, what their leadership style is. Talk to us a little bit about, over the years that you've been working, you've been in a lot of different rooms. What about that EQ is super important to ensure that people are feeling much more accepted, that they're much more included, but also from the standpoint of the leader, of them understanding how to treat people?
Yeah, so I think my superpower was actually not coming from a finance background, from a business background. And I think that it gave me a different perspective, knowing that what my lived experience was and my roadmap into finance was. I was a top performing, top ranking investment sales professional. I was a regional sales leader for a very large digital investing arm of the firm. And all of the things that people said to me along the way was like, wow, you're so good at like connecting with people. You're so like, you're so like easy to talk to. Like clients really trust you. And none of it ever, even when I was managing $98 million of my own and growing $20 million net new assets under management every year, not once did a single client ever say to me, you give me the best technical analysis of a stock I have ever gotten. right? And so even if you turn that into leadership skills, being able to connect with people on a human level
Yeah.
it's not rocket science, but it actually isn't front and center of what we classify as good leadership,
Right.
good
Right.
relationship management, right? And so I think that really needs to change, especially when we see these like really small boxes across sectors that we fit people into to say you have to be all of these things in order for us to think that you're capable, have potential, will be successful here, and
Yeah.
realize that instead of trying to box people in, how do we actually shape a culture, a workplace where everybody can succeed here? Everybody
Right.
from all different experiences, perspectives, backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever it is, can thrive here. And I think that is about breaking a mold and knowing that success doesn't fit into molds anymore.
Right. Right. That's a great call out as well, that there is no exact recipe.
Mhm.
However, when you have been in rooms with people where they're trying to not only showcase their own level of leadership style and values, all of those things are connected. Your leadership is connected to your values, which is connected to your moral compass, which is connected to your communication style, etc. And I think this is where people start to get themselves in trouble in and of itself, because they've never been held to any standard other than, oh, I went to this school. Oh, I have this many years of experience. I know this person, and so that's how I got into this job, which also happens quite a bit in very big corporations when people have no training when it comes to how to be a leader, how to speak to people, how to treat people. What are some of the things that you feel like you've learned even about yourself as a leader as you've trotted across your pathway within corporate America, and now more specifically as an entrepreneur who is consulting and trying to bring all of this wisdom into a place to assist others so that they are more well-rounded as leaders?
I think you hit the nail on the head, because we put people into leadership with a capital L role, sometimes based on their proximity to power. Yes, we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
But also when they become like really good at what it is that they're currently doing.
Yeah.
The natural next step to a lot of these leadership roles is you excel at what you do. And so now we're going to let you be in charge of teams of people that do the same thing. Without any understanding that just because you're really good at this doesn't mean you're going to be a good people manager. And leadership is 99.9% managing people.
That's right.
In most scenarios. So in my experience, I've learned that you can have the biggest title, you can have the alphabet soup of letters after your name, and still have zero idea how to inspire and lead and manage a team of people.
That's right.
And you can have no leadership title, but every single thing you do on a daily basis inspires other people to follow you, because you look out for the person next to you, in front of you, behind you, right? And you create this circle of trust and community around you that it doesn't even matter what you're selling. People just want to be in your orbit.
That's right.
And so those are the leaders that I think are so incredibly important to driving systemic change in the world today, because some of the people in these capital L leadership roles don't have that awareness or ability, and they confuse leadership with authority.
Yes. Let's lean into that a little bit more. Confusing leadership with authority. How do those things get intertwined and start to become problematic in workspaces?
Well, how do I give this as an example? I worked with a lot of leaders without the actual title who didn't need a title to inspire people to do what they wanted them to do.
That's right.
So you're leading by influence, you're leading by impact. And then you have leaders who have the actual title, are authoritative figures, and they drive influence and make people do what they want them to do because of fear. Or if you don't do it, your job is on the line, or you can't actually speak out now because your leader has this power, it has this authority over, whether or not you put food on the table for your family.
That's
and
right.
those are very distinctive differences. And I think that is a gap, Lindiwe, in the workplace today, is that we have a lot of leaders, but they're more authority figures versus actually being able to inspire high-performing, highly engaged, highly motivated teams of people.
That's right. That's right. It's a great kind of synthesizing down and simplifying it into this place so that people clearly understand where they are in their own journey. A lot of times you're talking to someone who is like, oh, yes, I am the SVP of X, Y, and Z, double KARM, right? And you're like, well, okay, do you know what each of these people on your team are looking to do with their future? Have you talked to them? Have you set them up for success, or are you just clocking what project they're completing? So it's back to what you were saying before. I feel like there's a level of simplicity that's attached to how people are behaving once they get into a leadership role. And a lot of times, you're right, that authority will hold people in spaces where, sure, they'll get the work done, but they don't really care for you.
Right, exactly. And I think we talked about this before, which was, if you don't love an organization or love a function within your organization that you work in, most people will be like, I can put up with it because I love my manager. I love my manager. I want to do everything for my manager. My leader is amazing, but not the other way around. Like, you can work in the best organization with the best team, leading the best clients, whatever it is. But if you have a really toxic leader, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how many great things you are doing. Eventually, you will quietly leave if they haven't already.
This is such a great call out, and it brings us into this next segment of what we're going to be discussing: toxic behavior, toxic environments, and how they impact the people that are actually doing the work. And so I want you to think about a time where you felt like, and not even just felt, because I'm going to make it clear to the audience that ends up watching these episodes, that yes, in real life, feelings are very different than facts. But when those two things come together, it's very powerful. And there's no space for you to disrupt someone else's truth or disrupt what has happened to an individual. And let me remind everyone as well, when people stand up for themselves, or they file a complaint, or they get that attorney, or what have you, it's because they're ready to put their entire capita on the line, right? Because of their level of honor and integrity, because they're ready to tell the story that have happened to them. So let's dig into that. Something that in your past that has happened where you had to stand up, where you had to say, you know what, enough is enough. What was the thing that was happening to you? Let's start with that. And then we want to dig into a little bit more of what you did. What steps did you take to try to move yourself away from some of these challenges?
I can, as you're asking me that, I have like multiple like thought bubbles, just like boop, and there was this time, and there was this time, and there's this time. And I'm sure like this has happened to so many people right now where, right, there's like this undercurrent in the water right now where people are just fed up.
Yeah.
They're fed up with status quo. They're fed up of being treated poorly. And even while I was leading diversity, equity, and inclusion, I was carrying the shared experiences of all of our equity deserving employees from all different backgrounds.
That's right.
And if you peel back the layer and actually remove the DEI label off of all of these complaints and issues.
Yeah.
It's like we just don't actually respect each other with basic amount of kindness as human beings. Right? No empathy, no compassion. Like we're just not kind to each other. And so a lot of the trajectory of my career, I found myself as either the only woman or the only woman of color or person of color. And, you know, I never thought anything was wrong because I just thought these were all the things that we had to go through to be successful.
Right.
And it wasn't until somebody pointed it out to me that, oh, like you might want to take a look at the no that you just got from this promotion that you put your hand up for, right? Because over time, you also collect feedback from people. Oh, you're not nice enough. So you be nice, right? And then it's like, oh, well, you didn't get this promotion into leadership because you're too nice. And like people might walk all over you. And it's like, well, which one is it? Like, which one do I have to be? And so I think that over time, situations like this of trying to fit in the box that I talked about previously into a mold that everybody wanted me to be at different areas, it's like, well, if I just showed up as myself, how could this be worse? Than all of the things that I've tried to listen to other people about their opinions on what I should show up as and how I should show up as. And so over time, it was actually just respecting people for who they are and what they brought to the table. As a leader, I just saw potential differently. I saw talent differently. I understood that, you know, we can't just fit people into what we thought of them. And even at the pinnacle of my career, I was told I didn't look like an executive. I didn't look like the type of leader we wanted representing the finance industry. And I'm like, look around you. I'm exactly the leader that you want representing this industry because there's not a lot of me here.
That's right. That's
right. And so, yeah, I honestly just want to make things make sense, right? We can't say one thing and then do another anywhere, like any part of the organization, no matter what role you're in. And we don't need to have power to create that change. We just need agency.
Agency of self, agency of voice, agency of remembering that you can be aligned to your visions for your career, for your dreams, even when it feels like the entity that you are succumbed to or you are indoctrinated into because your livelihood is tied to it. This is where you are and how you're paying your bills. This may be how you're building your dreams out externally as well. It often feels like it's so much that you don't have that agency to say, okay, I'm going to shift out of this role, or, oh, I'm going to pivot, or, oh, I'm going to speak to this manager about how they're treating me, right? I want to talk a little bit more about a time where you felt like you did have to speak up for yourself, and what did that generate for you? Did it generate more conversation with said leader and you all were able to come to a resolve? Or did it create the opposite where you would try to talk to leadership, that didn't garner anything? You filed a complaint, that didn't garner anything. Like, talk to us a little bit about a situation where you felt like, you know what, I think I've done all the talking I can do. What else can I do at this point?
Yeah, like, I think you said it best is, you know, hurt feelings and emotions, right? Cannot, like, if you look at any workplace, even employment law, like hurt feelings don't actually make people accountable. There's no infrastructure in workplaces to hold people accountable for hurting someone's feeling. And when we start labeling what those hurt feelings are a result of, you know, behaviors that are perpetrated against people, we start calling it like racism, sexism, homophobia, microaggressions. But again, peel back the layers and all you have is someone who doesn't respect their colleagues or employees in the workplace. And yeah, I would say that There have definitely been a lot of opportunities and experiences of mine where I did feel the need to speak up. One of them landed me in the role of diversity, equity, inclusion leader because I am a woman and woman of color. And I'm like, those experiences are not limited to me.
Right.
They happen to everybody under this particular leader. Right. And so I feel that all I could do, because the infrastructures across organizations and workplaces is not there to support, all I found I could do was say my piece. And then I, out of self-preservation, a lot of the times, remove myself. And how many people move jobs to protect themselves from a toxic boss? And then they get stuck.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And my goal was to point out these issues in a more systemic way to say, if we have a leader that victimizes, but also villainizes women, example, workplace, right? Sees them as small, discredits them every chance that they get. How can we be confident that, number one, we have the best talent at the table on these teams? And also, how can we possibly acquire the clients that we want to acquire, understanding that women drive half of the financial decisions and are half of the wealth owners in the world today? And it's more like taking something somebody did to me or a lot of people and highlighting the missed opportunity from a business, but also a talent perspective, because who would want to work with someone like that?
That's right. I think what you're highlighting here is, this particular pathway of speaking up and turning it into an opportunity to give guidance, right? I love this because it's not talked about enough in terms of pathways. Sometimes when you speak up, you do have to take that road where you file that complaint. Now the complaint is on file with HR, right? A lot of times we want that. We want something that's of record when you've been mistreated or when someone is behaving in a way that's not up to code or policy per said company. But then there are other things that are going on as well, to your point. A lot of times when you are filing that complaint, for example, you have to determine what is true per what has happened to you. If it's racism, then it's racism. And that is that. And we're going to follow that path. If it's something around the behavior of the leader who has missed several opportunities to do any self-interrogation, and they really are just naive to what does it mean to treat people well, that's a different thing, right? To your point. And so now it's, what do I do with that? And so you calling out this particular pathway to turn said experience into yet another role, or into building out a program, or building out an exchange of communication, it absolutely isn't talked about enough in these circumstances, because adversity, sure, you want to turn it around. You want to turn those challenges into something else, but it's not always available to do. And so I really like how you framed your response around that, how you kind of made this shift into trying to ensure that everyone could see the value of women being treated well, and also not treated as if they are small entities, not contributing in the same way as men to the business. We don't talk about that enough, especially in that context.
And there's definitely a gap, Lindiwe, because even early in my career, like I've said this time and time again, I've fought more women, 100 times more women than I have men in my career, right? And I don't blame women, because I feel like society has made it so that there's only one place at the table and it's going to be mine and it's not going to be yours. But like, the goal wasn't to get to the table and be the only one there. The goal was to get to the table, make the table bigger, and bring more women along, but we haven't quite gotten there yet from a societal and cultural standpoint. I once spoke up about this woman who was, similar age as me, but we weren't even on the same career trajectory. And in every single room I was in with her, she would whisper things behind my back, like, she's sleeping with so-and-so. And by virtue of my career being in investment sales, I was the only woman. All of my mentors were men. It's not because I wanted them to be, it's because there were no other women there to mentor me.
Right.
And when I raised this, 8-10 years down the road, because we were always in the same spaces together, I remember a senior leader saying to me, they're very good at their job.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do outside of work has nothing to do with what they do at work. And I vehemently disagree with that.
As do I.
Because if you have someone who's great at their job, but makes other people feel unsafe, unseen, less valued, like they don't belong there, it actually is way more detrimental than someone who is good at their job from a technical standpoint. And I feel like this is something that organizations across sectors really have a gap in, is saying that you can be really good at your job and be a really nice person that people want to work with. Right. And those things have to go hand in hand in order for us to create highly motivated, highly engaged, and very high performing teams across workplaces.
Yeah, this makes me think about something that I've said for years, which is, I think the key, and let me say this here, again, this is just me, but one of the keys I think to succeeding in large corporations or even small ones is when you're in the door, that you happen to run into a decent leader, meaning someone whose moral compass is always playing in real time, both at work and externally. If you can find a decent leader, you will be in good hands, because you can count on that person is always going to be working to do the right thing. But back to what you said, a lot of times we have people that are in roles that are only in the role because, oh yes, they are good at what they do. But then that's superseded by someone above them, AKA their leader, who's like, oh, that's just who they are. But look at how much money they brought in. Which, again, has created such a massive vacuum of how we're missing this space where we could be aligning people in a better way to work together, to collaborate together, if in fact we called out what was true about said leader.
Yeah.
It's also how you permeate environments of abuse and retaliation and bullying and et cetera, because no one's willing to call out what's true about said individual that happens to be leading the team.
Yeah. And I have so many people reach out to me on LinkedIn for like coffee chats, just because of the podcast that I have, the content that I have on LinkedIn, just to be like, the biggest one is, how do I move up in my career if I have a very toxic manager that doesn't actually see me or support me? And I would say, like, I've never let a poor manager stop me from achieving what I want to. It is hard. It is difficult. And when you're in the shit tornado, right, you don't see out of the tornado. So I would say that, number one, like, move your proximity and your visibility outside of your direct reporting line, outside of your business group, volunteer on boards, join committees, go to events that build your brand. Because again, we don't have agency over what other people do, how they choose to show up. We can just control how we show up. And I've been in a situation where, I was trying to remove myself from a toxic manager who used, things that employees were going through as gossip fuel. And I just didn't want to be in that environment. And even while I was trying to remove myself, they called the senior executive of the job I was going for and said, "You don't want to hire Jenny. They're really bad at their job right now." And I still got that job. And when I got there, the senior executive actually pulled me aside and said, "Just so you know, this happened. And just so you know, that said more about them than it said about you, because you have already built this brand of being a highly motivated, highly capable, talented individual." Right. And so again, like there's a lot of things in our careers that are outside of our control, that being one of them. And so it's just, how do we continue to show up in these spaces and places in front of these barriers, if you will, that really matter.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say here in this example is the leader that ended up still hiring you and pulled you aside had enough emotional intelligence about themselves to understand the situation. And also there was a willingness there. I think that's another key part, that there has to be a willingness to an individual to understand what's actually going on with an employee. I think about some of these stories, even from my own background, right? I've had to file complaints. I've had to do several different things in my history across 3 different decades. One thing that sticks out is, you're right, there have been more women who have caused me harm than men, which is unfortunate. And this echo chamber of women of color as well, who you would be excited to work for because it never happened. Like if you're of a certain age, you'd never have had a woman as a leader. And furthermore, you most definitely have never had a woman of color as someone who you're reporting up to. So having that opportunity come and then it just falls flat because the person has been indoctrinated into a certain amount of behavior as a direct result of either their own experiences. Sometimes the person that is oppressed becomes the aggressor, which is sad. And I've seen it many times in my career. And the trauma response is always, but what is going on here? You know, why is this person behaving this way? I want to better understand where they're coming from. But the truth is, that's not your fucking job.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not the job of the employee. Those are trauma responses that we're so used to, because we're so used to like, okay, I got my livelihood on the line. I need to show up because people of color are typically hyper vigilant. So I got to be stellar. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on with this person. I want to better understand it, but oh, wait. And then you start to snap out of that behavior. Like, none of this has anything to do with me.
Yeah.
Right? To your point, like you have no agency over why someone behaves the way that they do.
Yeah.
You have agency over you and your visions and the strategy that you want to implement to get yourself out of that toxic environment or out of that challenging situation. What would you say is a great step for someone who is new to corporate America? Maybe they're like 5 to 7 years in, they might even be 10 years in. What's a good thing that they could do for themselves, a good first step to assess if it's time for them to pivot and get away from their current situation?
I mean, everybody has a threshold of bullshit that they can tolerate. I would say it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Oh my, speak it.
Right? And so I was in a commissioned investment sales role, making the most amount of money I've ever had in my life. And you could not give me enough money to deal with what I was dealing with on a regular basis to get up to go to work. And so I knew my threshold before I removed myself from this direct reporting manager. Some people, it takes more than that, or it takes less than that. I would just say to evaluate, if you get up in the morning and you are like dreading going to work, I would say that's a really good sign. You should probably make a change, right? Or I use this analogy a lot because I think that it happens, doesn't matter where in your career you are, which is you're stuck in traffic. And I know, Lindiwe, you've been in New York City. You know, I'm in Ottawa here, but I go to Toronto enough, which is a big metropolitan, and there's a traffic jam everywhere you go. And it's like, when you're in traffic and you see the other lane moving a little bit, but you haven't moved for like 5 whole minutes.
Yeah.
Switch lanes, right? Get yourself out of where you feel stuck and switch lanes. And I know that's easier said than done, but do all of the things you need to do to make sure that you are prepared, know where it is that you're going, because you need somewhere to land. Do everything you need from a technical skills perspective, from a relationship perspective. Start building those channels, those networks that'll help you switch lanes.
Yeah.
And then ask for it when you get there. I think that a lot of us are like, oh my God, if I just stay here and keep putting my head down and doing the work and doing all these things, somebody is going to recognize it and somebody's going to pull me out and save me because I deserve it. And that's not the way things work, because there will always be very deserving people. We know a lot of incredibly capable, talented people out there, but it's the ones that ask for the opportunity that get it.
That's right. That's right. This is such a great statement. There are a lot of deserving people. Absolutely. And if you can put your mind at this place and understanding that, yes, you're just as talented as the next person and the next person and the next person, but you have to determine how far are you willing to go.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that questioning of self, it's not a bad thing to do. You also don't have to feel guilty about wanting to leave a company or wanting to leave a space, because that's the second thing that I think that starts to trap us, especially as people of color, women of color, because a lot of times we are the ones that are at the helm of moving our family to another place in time, generationally. I'm not saying that men don't do that as well. No. But when we think about how women contribute to their households, how they've been moving over the past 40 years, for example, the last 25, and especially when it came to COVID, there was a lot of data that showed that a lot of women are the breadwinners in their house, whether they're in partnerships, married, single, etc. Or if they're not the breadwinner, they are managing the funds of the house. And so with that being said, there's a lot to consider, right? When you're trying to get yourself out of a position and you're trying to pivot. What I really like about the examples that you've shared today, that the framing around it has really been about, I saw something that was happening. I didn't like said environment, or I wasn't comfortable with said individual who was behaving as a bad actor. And so you've figured out different ways to pivot from some of those things. You didn't necessarily take said route of breaking down a door. I'm not saying that that might not be useful from time to time where you have to kick a door in. Sometimes I think I have this meme in my head where I'm like, it's me. I'm like, okay, these people think I'm playing. And then you just kick the door in. But that's in your mind, right? That's just in your mind. You're not actually trying to be arrested and now have to go to jail and defend yourself because you kicked the door in. But metaphorically, of course, I think that there are so many different ways per your scenario and situation and level of comfort in which you can move yourself out of situations that are adverse or challenging or just not serving you anymore, right? I think there's three things to think about when it comes to pivoting. You have to kind of think through that reimagining of you. What is the reimagining of you? But before you get there, you have to assess what's good for me, what's not working for me. And you talked about that a little bit. Then that second part is the reimagining, right? What are my visions? What are my dreams? Can I say them out loud? Can I turn them into something else? And then that last part, I think, is about that realignment, right? What are the steps that you're going to take to get you from Monday to Friday, Friday to 3 months from now, 3 months from now to a year from now? How are all those things going to impact you down the road so that you be more successful? But that's kind of like how I think about like a framing for the power of pivoting and being very bold. Give us one or two things that you feel like where you are right now, right? Driving your business, hosting a podcast, putting out your newsletter. What do you hope to accomplish by being someone who not only pivoted from being in a space or spaces that may not have met your expectations or maybe weren't serving you. How are you now feeling like you're being served as someone who's now being a resource to someone else?
So there's a lot. I mean, first of all, first year of business, I can say has been one of the hardest, most challenging, but also most rewarding experiences of my life, because again, I have agency to work with the organizations and the leaders that I choose to work with. You know, you're not just there because you're in the same shit tornado as them and you're all stuck in this on this island together and you have to work with them and keep quiet and, you know, play nice in the sandbox. So that has been really interesting. I feel like in my experience has taught me that, you know, it really takes system redesign, like ecosystem redesign in our workplaces right now to drive real change. And so, you know, instead of fixing the person, doesn't matter which side of the coin they're on, they can be the perpetrator of poor behavior or they can be the recipient, but instead of fixing the person, like fix the process.
Right.
How do we enable leaders to manage teams of people? How do we hold them accountable for the decisions they make? How do we create trust in the ecosystem so that people want to speak up because they know that their words actually carry weight instead of getting swept under the rug?
That's right.
And fix the structure, not the symptoms. Because you know what we've made a really good point of doing, Lindiwe, is we love to give people excuses for why they are. Oh my God, that person they're just jealous of you. They're just insecure. They had it really hard. And so like people, not to their fault, like they've built up armor. They've built up this like hard shell where sometimes they might show up the way they would. But like, listen, we've all been through some shit. Right? And you can either use it as an excuse to be this way forever, or you can be somebody who makes sure that other people never feel the same way as you do. And so you fix the structure, you don't make excuses for the symptoms, and make sure that all of these conversations are still being had at places where decisions are being made. Like I love sense of community. I love sense of community. It is very important. There's a lot of women's forums out there that are, you know, empowering women to reach their goals. But those spaces also leave out a lot of women from all different backgrounds today. And to your point, we have that compounded negative impact of trying to meet cultural, not only societal, but cultural, racial expectations of who we are. And so I think that there's a lot of progress because the fact that I have this firm helping organizations do that, it's very clear that there's a huge shift right now in the landscape where people are realizing that helping people live up to fully who they are and their potential is actually a competitive advantage. But it is needed to drive innovation also because we can no longer solve today and tomorrow's problems with yesterday's thinking and yesterday's like ecosystem.
I feel like there's something so beautiful about having this realization that you are more than what you've lost. I heard that statement at the Black Beauty Roster Summit just a few weeks ago from the super, super dope Danessa Myricks, right? And I kept thinking, I'm like, that is a beautiful way to summarize and synthesize all the S's of how going from being in a hard place to understanding what you're capable of. And then I'm adding this last part of trusting your foundation. That's what I've gotten from you, from listening to you, that there has been pieces and examples and stories that you have experienced that were adverse, that were challenging. But each time you were just trying to find a way to trust your foundation and not give in to this idea of what people thought that you should be or who you're supposed to be or who they hope you are. I think a lot of times, even in my own experience, I've had to remind people, I'm never going to make you feel more comfortable about who you think I am. I can only be me. I don't know how to be anybody else. And
Mhm.
even if it's never enough for someone else, we all have to fight through knowing that the foundation that you've built through your professional experience, through your network, through your friends, that it has to be good enough. It has to be for you. Because, anybody could write you up and give you feedback. It's not even real feedback. That's a whole nother story. But anybody could write you up, put whatever rating they want on your performance evaluation. But when you wake up the next day or when you go to bed that night after experiencing said shenanigan, said experience, you still have to remember that you were so much more than what you think you've lost or how it is that people are seeing you.
Mhm.
Talk to us a little bit about the things that you're doing with your company. And then one thing that you think that has helped you on your journey, anytime you've been faced with challenges or adversity, one thing that is a quote or a statement or something that has been your mantra that has pulled you out of those situations when you recognized that they were happening.
So thank you for that. People can find me and my firm, Catalais Consulting. That's Catalais Consulting. And my podcast is called Tune Up Your Warrior. Follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter that I pump out every week, but that is grounded in these experiences that we talked about, but less about shaming. This isn't about shaming, right? And
No,
I
no.
feel like the world looked very different 10
Mhm.
years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, when all of these ecosystems and workplaces and business strategies were all created.
Yeah.
It is much, much different today. And so it's my organization really just helps companies and leaders make sure that whatever they're doing is relevant for the world today, but also breaking down silos so that you don't have, only marketing for Asian communities, Black communities, Indigenous communities on our cultural heritage days or months that we get once a year. But how do we integrate all of these principles and values into our core operations so that we actually build market share out there for what the world looks like today? And I think that if I could think of one thing that has kept me going, it really is like meeting people where they are.
Oh,
Because
man.
people will not know what you have experienced, right, in your life, because we all have individual experiences that shape who we are. My experience as an immigrant Chinese Canadian woman is not going to be the same as somebody else. Like, I am an experience. I'm a lot, but I am an experience of one, right? You either love me or you don't, and that's okay. But I would rather someone not like me for who I am than like me for someone I am not. And so I really think that just understanding that our differences help bridge these gaps in understanding and actually help us move forward in the world in a really innovative and powerful way has kept this work going.
I appreciate that so much. I mean, meeting people where they are, there's something to that. There's something to be chewed on, for example, when it comes to that statement, because a lot of times, again, something I said earlier, you can see a person and you wonder about them and you're trying to understand what's going on here, right? But there's a balance to that as well when we are meeting people where they are so that we are not sucked into their world, right? I have this meter, and I think I shared this with you the last time I spoke with you, which is, you've got foolishness, which is a way of thinking, right? Then there's shenanigans. Okay. That's when people's foolishness turns into action. And then we have insanity. And so I have been working off of that meter for quite some time as a professional. And, I've seen a lot of things in each one of these areas. But I think, again, back to what you said, you have to determine how far are you willing to go for where the situation is per the world that you're in? And how do you want to become someone who ascends beyond some of those shenanigans so that you don't become the thing that has caused you harm as well?
Your foolishness meter. I
Mhm.
see that sometimes as there are people that have malicious intent,
Yeah.
and that there's people that just don't know any better.
Mm.
But because we all have the capability to grow, to evolve, to learn, to build, right? Some
Yeah.
people just don't know any better. So meeting people where they are and understanding that sometimes they haven't gone through the experiences that you've gone through, to
Mhm.
understand with full empathy, full human empathy, because unless they have, they can't understand possibly.
Oh, man.
Right. And so
Empathy.
sometimes they
Yes.
don't know any better. And so
Mm.
instead of blaming people for the way they think, the way they see the world, the perspectives that they have, it's like understanding that we just sometimes need to have conversations, respectful, meaningful
Mm.
conversations like this one with others that think differently than we do in
Yeah.
order to move people along in the direction that we need to go
Yeah.
today.
Taking them on a journey, but it's their journey.
It's
You're
their
there,
journey.
but it's
Yeah.
their journey. Absolutely. Jenny Chen, J Chen, AKA amazingness, entrepreneur, consultant, wisdom sharer, courage whisperer like myself, TM. I thank you so much for doing this with me. So much of these conversations that I'm trying to have with people, that I'm already having with people, they mean so much to me because we never would have seen something like this 20 years ago. The
Mm.
work that you're doing, having that agency inside of yourself to really believe that what you were saying, wisdom has come from that, right? And now you want to share that. That's something useful. And again, we wouldn't have seen it 20 something years ago. The world is changing rapidly. Culture is changing rapidly. And so I so appreciate you wanting to contribute to it in a positive, impactful way where people feel like, again, they are not by themselves. And you wanting to bring all of that to organizations and teams, they are going to be better for it. Okay. They're going to be better for it. And with that, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Lindiwe, for having me. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Yes.
You inspire so many of us. I told you already, I was so inspired by even your words at the Obsidian Awards, where you received your award, and on that stage where you look like a queen. And like you really hit something that deeply resonated with me and started this journey together as a courage whisperer. And so you show us that courage doesn't always have to be loud, door kicking warrior, right? Like carrying everybody's pain with them. But it's how do we turn the trauma that we have experienced into inspiration for others to lead differently, to think differently. So thank you for everything you're doing. And thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much. Continue to check out They Tried It. We're going to continue to have more voices. And if you know of anyone who has a story to tell or wants to share their wisdom, feel free to reach out directly to me. I'm Lindiwe Davis, the Couch Coach. You can find my newsletter, They Tried It, both on LinkedIn and on Substack as well. And stay tuned for what's coming on YouTube. I appreciate you all. Cheers.
Never gonna stop. No cosign needed, I've been self-made. If you cut from my